On February 28, 2026, during the first day of a joint U.S. Israeli airstrike against Iran, the Iranian military launched 52 of China's latest supersonic anti-ship missiles, the CM-302, targeting the U.S. Navy's USS Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group. These missiles, dubbed carrier killers, failed miserably. Not a single missile hit its target. Some of the missiles were intercepted by the U.S. Aegis defense system. Others detonated mid-flight. Several more veered off course due to guidance system failures. None of them reached their intended speed of Mach 3 as designed. This failure has raised important questions, many of which stem from a range of explanations. Iranian operational mistakes, insufficient intelligence support, and U.S. electronic jamming. While these factors did contribute, they don't explain the core issue. The true reason lies in a different, more revealing story. On March 17th, the official website of the Chinese Academy of Sciences quietly updated its page. A name vanished: Yang Wei, the chief designer of the J-20 fighter jet. He was one of China's top aviation weapons experts. There was no statement, no explanation, and no official notice. His biography as an academician was simply removed. The day before, on March 16th, the official website of the Academy of Engineering also underwent an update. 3 more names disappeared: Wu Manqing, a radar expert and former vice president of the Academy; Zhao Xianheng, a nuclear weapons engineering expert; and Wei Yiying, a missile guidance expert and former deputy general manager of the China Aerospace, Science and Industry Corporation. Earlier, on February 4th, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress removed 3 individuals from their representative positions in a single day: Zhou Xianmin, former chairman of Aviation Industry Corporation of China; Luo Qi, chief engineer of China National Nuclear Corporation; and Liu Tangli, former president of the China Academy of Engineering Physics. In the span of 1 month, all these figures, who are responsible for radar, missiles, nuclear weapons, and fighter jets, vanished. On March 25th, the Dalian Intermediate People's Court in Liaoning sentenced Tang Rui-song, former AVIC chairman and party secretary, to death with a 2-year reprieve. The court found that between 1998 and 2024, Tan accepted over 600 million RMB in bribes during corporate mergers, project bidding, and equipment finalization processes. The time span is crucial: 26 years. For 26 years, Tang Rui-song took bribes while in his position at AVIC. Behind each bribe was a subpar supplier pushed into the system, a problematic contract approved with a signature, and batches of unqualified parts allowed to pass through unchecked. The official description of Tang Rui-song's actions is military-industrial profiteering. In those 26 years, how many projects did he approve? How many of the contracts for each part of the J-20 were truly qualified under his watch? This question has never been publicly answered. What was Tang Rui-song responsible for? The J-20, aircraft engines, the core fighting capability of the Chinese Air Force. The issue of 52 missiles missing their targets and these names disappearing from official websites are part of the same issue. Let's clarify the CM-302 missile. The official specifications look impressive: a range of 290 kilometers, a top speed of Mach 3, sea-skimming flight, and active radar guidance. On paper, it seems like a weapon that would keep any aircraft carrier commander up at night. However, there is one key characteristic of this missile that isn't listed in the specifications. It's blind. The CM-302 shares the same guidance system as its predecessor, the C-802. The issue is, it lacks a data link, satellite-based continuous guidance, and terminal active updates. At the moment of launch, the missile only receives one target coordinate. And after that, it flies based on that single address. If the target stays at that coordinate, it'll hit. But what if the target is a maneuvering warship? Warships don't stay put. During the missile's flight, the U.S. ship can turn, accelerate, and release countermeasures. By the time the missile reaches its target coordinate, the ship's no longer there. To make things worse, the CM-302 generates intense plasma sheath during supersonic flight, which interferes with its guidance system's signal reception. The faster it flies, the worse the self-interference. A missile that was billed as a Mach 3 carrier killer, but it becomes less accurate the faster it goes, with no idea what it's actually targeting. This isn't a tactical problem. It's a flaw built into the design. Did the Chinese know about this? They did, but they didn't tell Iran about it when they sold the missile. First, let's talk about the Hongqi 9B system. This is China's top-tier export anti-aircraft missile system, designed to compete with Russia's S-300 and the U.S. Patriot systems. Iran received the delivery in July 2025 as part of a $5 billion oil for weapons deal. 3 systems were deployed around Tehran, the Natanz nuclear facility, and the Fordo nuclear facility. In other words, Iran placed its most valuable defense assets in its most critical locations. On February 28th, the U.S. Israel strike began. The U.S. Navy's EA-18G electronic warfare aircraft were the first to deploy, specifically targeting and surpassing the air defense radars. Israel's F-35 jets breached the airspace. B-2 stealth bombers launched penetrating bombs. Tomahawk missiles saturated the target area from multiple directions. As a result, all 3 Hongqi 9B systems were destroyed in the first hour by U.S. anti-radiation missiles. The more critical issue was that these systems barely fired any intercept missiles. It wasn't that they were too late, the radar was disabled, and the systems didn't detect anything. They were effectively blind. Iranian air defense operators sat at their control consoles, but they saw nothing on their screens. They didn't know that hundreds of planes were already in the air. They thought the systems were working normally. Then the missiles came in. But here's the most shocking part. This wasn't the first time the Hongqi 9B failed. In May 2025, during the India-Pakistan conflict, Pakistan deployed the Hongqi 9B to protect its key military bases. India responded by using precision-guided munitions combined with Harep drones, specifically targeting the air defense radars in the first wave. Approximately 20% of Pakistan's Air Force infrastructure was destroyed. Defense analyst Tom Cooper wrote at the time that Pakistan's air defense system in Karachi was disabled by India and that the HQ-9 battalion defending the city was hit. In January 2026, when the U.S. military arrested Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, the Venezuelan military used the Chinese JY-27A radar system. On paper, this radar could detect F-22s and F-35s from 350 kilometers away. In reality, U.S. aircraft went undetected throughout the operation. Maduro was captured without the Chinese radar even triggering a warning. 3 conflicts, 3 failures, the same system, the same outcome. Is it the technology that's failing, or is it that no one truly cares whether the technology works? Let's first explain how the Chinese military-industrial system really operates. A missile, from design to deployment, goes through many stages: project approval, research and development, testing, finalization, production, procurement, and storage. Each stage involves power, and when there's power, there's room for rent-seeking. The most critical stage is the chip. Guidance chips, radar processing chips, and electronic warfare chips. These are the brains of modern weapons. Due to Western sanctions on high-end chips, China has to rely on gray market imports or use civilian-grade chips for military applications. This creates a system where suppliers buy chips cheaply from overseas, sometimes second-hand, sometimes repurposed civilian chips. Then they report inflated prices for reimbursement, several times higher than the actual cost. How is quality control handled? It depends on whether you pay the right people. If you do, the product is deemed qualified, and if not, it's not. Academicians falsify data at the R&D level, while those at the procurement level allow subpar products into storage, and lower-level personnel turn a blind eye. Everyone knows, everyone takes the money, and no one speaks up. In the end, what's loaded into the missile is a perfect test report and a chip that no one dares to guarantee. This explains why, after former Defense Minister Li Shangfu was removed from his position, a detail emerged. Some missile warheads in the rocket force were filled with water, not fuel. What target can this missile hit? It can only hit the PowerPoint slides reporting to the superiors. Data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute supports the severity of this issue. In 2024, China's military industry saw a 10% revenue decline. One of the main reasons was the corruption crackdown, which led to the freezing of numerous procurement contracts due to inflated prices and quality fraud. When a country's defense industry sees a revenue drop because it's investigating its own fraud, it highlights the fundamental problem. Now you understand why the purge list appeared at this particular time. It wasn't because Xi Jinping suddenly discovered corruption. It's always been there. The issue became a political crisis because of the battlefield in Iran. $5 billion worth of weapons, all wiped out in one battle. 3 Hongqi 9B systems were silent in the first hour, 52 carrier killers, with none of them hitting their targets. Beijing spent so much money and invested so many years to tell the world about China's military rise, and then, in less than an hour, all of it was exposed to the world. That's why those names had to disappear. Not because they were the only corrupt officials, but because the weapons they managed just ruined China's reputation on the world's biggest stage. A report from the CSIS in February states that since 2022, over 100 senior PLA generals have been purged or suspected of being purged. 2 defense ministers, 2 vice chairmen of the Central Military Commission, and the chief of the Joint Staff were all removed from power. Now, the entire Central Military Commission has only 2 people left, Xi Jinping and his anti-corruption head, Zhang Shengmin. An analysis by Foreign Affairs magazine puts it bluntly, Xi Jinping is carrying out a full-scale purge of his senior command. He's personally removing all the generals he personally promoted. Even Xi Jinping doesn't know how many of these weapons contain water instead of fuel. Now let's return to the question we left earlier. China knew the CM-302 missile had significant flaws when targeting moving targets. So why sell it to Iran? Why allow Iran to use it against a U.S. aircraft carrier? One possible answer is that China needed a real battlefield to test whether this missile actually worked. Its real goal is to test the Taiwan Strait. In April 2025, during the U.S. military's Operation Rough Rider, the Houthi rebels, using Iranian-supplied anti-ship missiles, attacked the USS Harry Truman carrier strike group. The missile was a copy of China's C-802. As a result, none of the missiles hit their target. Some were intercepted, others exploded mid-flight, and some veered off course. The same technology, the same outcome. What conclusion did Beijing draw from these battle reports? The correct conclusion should have been that the missile has a fundamental flaw and is practically ineffective against moving targets in real combat. Yet, China still sold it to Iran. They still put it into action. The Houthi attack used a subsonic version, so the data wasn't clean enough. The CM-302 is a supersonic version, and to get accurate data, it had to be used in a real battle against a real Aegis defense system. Only then could China see if this missile was truly a game-changer or just a useless piece of paper in a Taiwan Strait scenario. In the hands of the Iranians, with Iranian lives at stake, these 52 missiles became live-fire tests for the People's Liberation Army. The answer was shocking to Beijing. It was all a sham. This is why the name of Yang Wei, the chief designer of the J-20, disappeared from the official website. It's also why the others' names disappeared and why Tang Rui-song was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve. Think about the logic here. Xi Jinping didn't remove them because of their corruption. He knew about the corruption long ago and tolerated it. He removed them because this war showed him a painful truth. He, being the highest leader of the country, doesn't even know if the weapons in his arsenal are actually functional. He doesn't know if his chief designer has been selling defective products all along. So, how should Taiwan view the situation? Not with celebration, but with vigilance. Dennis Wilder, a professor at Georgetown University, said that the significance of the Iran war to the PLA is equivalent to the impact of the 1991 Gulf War on China's military. Back then, China witnessed the U.S. military destroy the Iraqi army with precision-guided weapons in just a few weeks, prompting China to begin a 30-year modernization transformation. Now, history is repeating itself. The difference is, this time, the PLA is the one standing on the sidelines taking notes. Now they know where the chip problems lie. They understand the vulnerabilities of radars under electronic warfare suppression. They've learned that supersonic missiles without data link support have a hit rate of 0. They will adapt. The Taiwan Strait is not the Persian Gulf. Taiwan is only 180 kilometers from the closest PLA base. The advantages of quantity, geography, and saturation attacks, these won't disappear just because the CM-302 missed its target on an American warship. A great power that has had its weaknesses exposed is often more dangerous than one that is blindly confident, because now it knows exactly where it needs to improve.